State Senator Mia McLeod, a Democrat from Richland County, is now the first African American to run for governor of South Carolina. Today, I talk one-on-one with the state senator about her campaign, the issues she wants to tackle, and more for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. State Senator Mia McLeod, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me, Quintin. Glad to be here.
I appreciate it. Obviously, you're a state senator from Richland County and have been for a couple of years now. And before that, obviously, you were in the House of Representatives as a state representative for that particular county. Now, you are the first African-American woman running to become the next governor of South Carolina.
I am.
Where are you emotionally right now?
Emotionally, I'm in a good place, actually. It's been a long road so far, and we are still, of course, on this journey, but very enlightening, very rewarding, and so I'm looking forward to the next 2 weeks and better days ahead as we go into the general.
What have the days been before this particular primary that's coming up in the next 2 weeks for your campaign?
Brutal. Busy, extremely busy. I am the only candidate in this primary who is currently serving in office. I've been serving in the South Carolina Senate now for 6 years, and trying to juggle as many hats as I do is not easy. I will admit that. But it's something that I know is desperately needed. We need change in the state, and so I'm facing this part of my journey just as and I'm just as committed as I have been to my House and Senate service. So serving in the Senate this year especially was different. It was extremely different because we had probably 8 or 9 bills that were set for special order. None of them were bills that we wanted. And when I said we, I mean the people. The people were not in favor of the bills that were set for special order this year. And we've had an unprecedented number of bills that were prioritized by the Republican majority. And so it's made things a lot more challenging to serve while I'm running, and there's no template for what I'm doing because it's never been done, not by a Black woman in South Carolina. And so I understand that this is new terrain for me and for my team, and so we are taking it one day at a time. But we've been wearing all of those hats pretty well, I think.
Now, how many of those bills were actually brought towards the Senate in the past year, in the past couple of months? And when you talk about those particular bills,
when I think about the bills, I did not count them, but we had an unprecedented number of bills that were prioritized, set for special order by the South Carolina Senate this year alone. I'm thinking, Quintin, it was at least 8 or 9. It felt like every time we went into session, especially during the waning days of the legislative session, we had so many bills that were prioritized and set for special order, and that just means that even the bills that had objections on them were when they're set for special order, those objections don't matter, and so we are still forced to debate issues that the general public, people across South Carolina, really don't. They aren't the priorities of the people. They are the priorities of the Republican majority. So it was extremely difficult, to be honest, to have to deal with issues when we were very intentional in the Senate. The Republican majority was very intentional about not debating the hate crimes bill this session, and that was very disheartening for me. I was the one who shared. Mrs. Polly Shepherd was kind enough to do a video and just talk about the hatred that she faced, that very few South Carolinians have. I mean, she stared hatred in the face as one of the Mother Emanuel survivors, one of only two. And her video was so powerful, so poignant, that I was grateful to be in a position to share that with my colleagues, but so disheartened and disgusted with the fact that these were people, many of them were senators, along with my friend and colleague, Senator Clemente Pinckney. And for them to knowingly block us from even having a debate, even having a conversation on the floor about the hate crimes bill, it just shows that how much hate still exists in South Carolina, and it was a sobering moment.
Now, Senator, let me ask you, what were those debates that you were basically forced to debate that you actually had objections to?
Oh, there were so many. I will try to think about some of the big ones. Of course, some of the more recent ones were the Women's Sports Act. It was the anti-transgender bill. We had a bill that originated from my bill. I introduced a bill last year to raise the weekly unemployment benefits for South Carolinians when I discovered through the bill that I introduced that the Department of Employment and Workforce was knowingly cheating the people of South Carolina out of their unemployment benefits during the height of the pandemic. And so I introduced a bill to raise the weekly benefits when South Carolinians are unemployed through no fault of their own, knowing that people are still struggling, and people who are unemployed during the pandemic and some have been unemployed since the pandemic. Folks around South Carolina are struggling, and to hear this governor talk about, we have a surplus of money, we've got unprecedented money, that is disingenuous, because, I just believe that we can't have a surplus of federal or state money unless and until all of the basic needs of South Carolinians have been met. That is not the case. And so I introduced that bill last year. This year, the majority leader who was in that meeting, the subcommittee meeting, I wasn't even on that committee when my bill was debated in the subcommittee, but he was. And so he recognized, just as I did, that the Department of Employment and Workforce was cheating South Carolinians out of their unemployment money. So I thought this year, when I saw that he had introduced a bill, I don't care about who gets the credit, I just wanted that bill to move forward. And I saw that he had introduced a bill, but there were no details about the bill that he introduced to do something with the weekly benefits for unemployed South Carolinians. And so I asked him, I asked the subcommittee members, and nobody seemed to know. And before very few days had passed, he actually introduced a bill to not to right the wrong that he was well aware of, that the Department of Employment and Workforce had done with their blessing. He introduced a bill to give the agency retroactive discretion that they knew they didn't have. And so, which is unconstitutional, but the Republicans don't seem to care about the Constitution when they are doing what they do. And so he introduced a bill to give them retroactive discretion, not to reimburse South Carolinians. And, so just bills like that. We've had, of course, the medical marijuana bill. I was a co-sponsor of that bill and have been with Senator Tom Davis every time he's introduced it. And this year we spent 3 weeks on that bill trying to, the Republicans, some of them were very intentional about trying to do away with some of the conditions that would basically qualify South Carolinians for medical marijuana. And we spent so much time on that bill that it was just it was an eye opener for me, only to have the House shut it down in the final week of the session. So we set, like I said, an unprecedented number of bills for special order. And the overwhelming majority of those bills were not in the best interest of South Carolinians.
And I want to talk more about the marijuana bill in just a second. But let's go
Sure.
to what you posted on Twitter a couple of months ago when you initially announced that you were going to run. You said this quote, "I'm running for governor of South Carolina. It's time we say no to business as usual and stand up to the good old boys who have never failed to put their own interests above ours." But let me ask you this, Senator. How would you
Yes.
how would you stand up to the good old boys in the case of the accused sexual rapist Bowden Turner? Bowden allegedly raped 3 women in Orangeburg area, but according to reports, has been allowed to walk free. He has allegedly visited Columbia several times while he was out on bond. And just recently, according to WCSC TV, newly obtained documents show that State Senator Brad Hatto allegedly sent an email to prosecutors at the beginning of April, which says the reason behind Turner's 50-plus bond violations was because it was, quote, therapy for his depression. You said on Twitter about your endorsement for Hatto, quote, "I am so honored to be endorsed by Senator Brad Hatto. For years, we have worked alongside each other in the South Carolina Senate to make a South Carolina where everyone can drive." But Senator, let me ask you this. Isn't Hatto a part of the good old boy system?
Quintin, as a sexual assault survivor myself, I have railed against the good old boys in my own party and in the Republican Party. That has been my trademark since I've been in office. I was not aware of, and I'm still not well versed on what Brad Hutto does in his private or professional life. And so I was basing that comment and his endorsement on the fact that every time the Republicans and our male-dominated Senate and House have come for our reproductive rights, every time they have, led the charge on anti-abortion rhetoric and legislation, Brad has been right there, standing with us. Those of us who have been fighting those issues, Senator Margie Bright Matthews, Senator Marlon Kempson, and I, we have all, the 4 of us have been kind of in lockstep on the issues, and those were the issues that I was referring to when I mentioned Brad. I discovered after the fact that he represented this young man on I guess, as his attorney, but I still don't know. And of course, I don't condone. No, I don't condone. Why would I? As a sexual assault survivor, I certainly cannot condone any violations. That is the most traumatic violation a woman can endure. And as somebody who knows what that's like, my heart aches for his victims and their families. And I have been a staunch advocate my entire career for victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. So I certainly would am not in favor of anything that is done to allow him to not pay for or to not have any consequences for his crimes.
Now, have you renounced State Senator Brad Hatto?
I have not renounced Brad because I have not had time to look into his professional representation of this guy. I only discovered that after we tweeted about his support of me, and that, as I said, was limited to abortion issues and the things that he stood arm in arm with us on. And I don't renounce that because we appreciated his help on those issues. Now, what he does in his private and professional life is his business. And if we looked into, I would think that if we looked into the professional and personal lives of many other House members and Senate members, we would find similar infractions, if you will, and similar cases that have been represented by House and Senate members. So I don't have the time to, look at who he represents professionally, and was not aware of that case until after the fact. So no, I don't condone it. I haven't even had a conversation with Brad about it. But I do know that you would be hard pressed to find anybody who has been more vocal and more who's challenged and gone after the good old boys as much as I have during my time in the House and the Senate. So we would definitely part ways on that issue if he is responsible for this man being back on the streets.
Now, and financially, when you do find out these full details, would you pull out your campaign checkbook and actually refund Mr. Hatto his $4,000 campaign donation to your campaign?
$4,000. I don't think he
over the years.
Oh, over the years.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, I don't. Listen, Quintin. When I accept campaign donations, those are donations. They are not buying my silence. They are not buying my votes. I have gone against many people who have contributed to my campaign. Just look at my reports and look at the people that I've gone after for the things that they've done in the Senate. Now, I've never gone after anybody for what they do in their private or professional life because I really don't have time to look into that or to be, because I'm running for governor and because I currently serve in the Senate, that I have to be focused on those issues and from where I stand and where I sit in the South Carolina Senate. I mean, Brad is our minority leader, and so he is the one who is helping us with strategy and helping us figure out ways that we can defeat some of this awful legislation that the Republicans are putting up. And that is where my focus is. I am always concerned about my constituents and how our actions in the Senate impact them. So, no, I don't plan to do any of that. I'm moving forward knowing that the people of South Carolina know that as a sexual assault survivor, I have really taken the lead in the Senate, especially when I had a colleague stand on the Senate floor and talk about a woman in the upstate who allegedly was grateful to have been raped. And those are the things that, really are difficult to deal with. And when I was interviewed about my statement on the Senate floor and my disclosure that I am a sexual assault survivor, I poured my heart out to my colleagues, not for them, not because I thought I would change their minds, but because I know that I am speaking for so many women and girls when I speak about my experience as a sexual assault survivor. And when it comes to those issues and when it comes to the anti-abortion rhetoric, when it comes to the anti-transgender rhetoric and everything anti-LGBTQ, Brad is right there. And so I was surprised that he represented this individual, but I have no control over that. I have no control over what people do in their professional lives. And if I were to go back and refund the contributions of those who have given to my campaign, if my opponents were to go back and refund the contributions of those who have given to their campaigns. I mean, are you asking Joe Cunningham the same question about Dick Harpootlian, who represents Alec and his family in Hampton County? I mean, those just aren't typical issues that we deal with as candidates. Otherwise, I mean, we would have to know the background and the history of everybody who contributes, and that's basically impossible. So if we're not looking into Joe Cunningham's campaigns and, who has contributed to his campaigns, like, Dick Harpootlian and others, then why are we focused only on somebody that I highlighted who has stood with me on the Senate floor fighting the very issues that he's accused of, representing the other side on in his profession. Yeah.
And of course, I will get to Mr. Cunningham and ask some hard questions as well. So,
sure.
Yes, ma'am. But let me go to gun violence. You said this on Twitter, quote, "Gun violence is an out-of-control epidemic in South Carolina. The statistics speak for themselves." What is the current number of injuries in the state due to gun violence?
What is the current number of what?
Yes, ma'am. What are the current number of injuries in the state of South Carolina?
Oh, injuries.
Due to gun violence.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that that we have the number of gun violence injuries, but I can tell you that South Carolina is always at the top of the heap when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to sexual assault, and these are things that we can change, and I've been committed to that, not just now that I'm running for governor, but look at my record. Look at the things that I've always championed. I've always had the support of the common sense gun advocates, those organizations, and I've been recognized even this time by Moms Demand Action because of the stances that I've always taken to try and curb gun violence. And I've not only said some of the things that I think we need to do. I've introduced legislation to change our gun laws in the state. They are too lax. They are too broad. Even when I was in the House and just after the Mother Emanuel massacre, I introduced legislation to extend the background or expand background checks so that a gun buyer can't, or a gun seller can't sell a firearm unless and until the background check passes. I mean, that to me is just a common sense bill that would really have a significant impact on what we're seeing in South Carolina. But I also have introduced legislation to make sure that those who have been adjudicated mentally ill or mentally incompetent are not able to purchase or possess a firearm. And more recently, I've introduced a bill that would require every legal gun owner, because I'm tired of the Republicans saying, oh, these are law-abiding citizens. Well, Dylan Roof wasn't. And there are so many who aren't law-abiding citizens who do have access to guns, and it's wreaking havoc on our state, especially now that South Carolinians are still struggling because of the pandemic. There's still things that need to be changed, and I think liability insurance would help people think about protecting and keeping their firearms in safe places, away from children, away from not on the seats of their cars, or not on the consoles or the dashboards of their cars, so that there will be fewer break-ins, car break-ins, home break-ins. I mean, we've got to do whatever we can to make sure that we restrict access to those who are intending to do harm to others or engage in criminal activity with guns.
Now, with the liability insurance, Senator, tell me more about that. How would you enact that in South Carolina?
Well, we insure lots of things in South Carolina, don't we, Quintin? We insure our cars, we insure our homes, and I'm licensed to carry as well. And so to hear that the Republicans, who are always in lockstep with the NRA, but to hear them repeatedly talk about these are law-abiding citizens, you're trampling on our Second Amendment rights, that is simply not true. We have to be responsible as gun owners as well, because gun owners are sometimes, contributing to the gun violence that is happening in our state. We've seen a rash of break-ins, and I've talked to my sheriff here in Richland County. Right. I've talked to other sheriffs across the state, and they're concerned about the fact that people, especially about open carry now, and that hasn't even begun to really have the kind of impact that we know it will have. And it's interesting because the Sheriff's Association was adamantly opposed to medical marijuana, but okay with open carry. They were eerily silent when it came to open carry. So we know for a fact here in South Carolina that issues like that have been politicized by the Republican majority, and it's costing people their lives. I am a gun sense advocate, always have been, always will be. And because I'm licensed to carry, I understand that, the Republicans have been very successful, very effective at making people think that we are, those of us who are gun sense advocates, are trying to take their guns away. I mean, just after this latest mass murder In Texas, I have a colleague from Spartanburg who did an ad, I guess. Somebody sent it to me where he's saying, oh, they're coming for our guns now. Make sure that you get your ammunition, get your firearms, get ready, because now, because of what has happened in Texas, no regard for the lives that were lost, no regard for what actually happened here 7 years ago. And, to see them amp up their rhetoric in that way and be as tone deaf and as insensitive and as just as, not as compassionate as I would hope they would be, considering that something like that has already happened here. We've got to do better. We've got to put things in place that will help us tone down the rhetoric and put some level of responsibility around those of us who are licensed to carry in this state.
Now, Senator, let me ask you this hypothetically: if you were in the state senate right now, if they were in legislation right now, would you say introduce some sort of legislation to impose a state freeze on handgun sales?
That's something that I have not thought a lot about.
Okay.
I would have to look more into it. I don't know. I do know that an unprecedented number of firearms have been sold, I'm sure, in South Carolina and across the country because of the Republicans' rhetoric, because of the NRA's rhetoric. And that too, we have way more guns in this country than we have people. And that's alarming for a number of reasons. But I do think that the starting point, ground zero, should be just common sense gun reforms here in South Carolina. There are so many things that we can and should do, from expanding background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, to making sure that guns don't get into the hands or are less likely to fall into the hands of those who are intentional about doing harm and causing harm to others. Quintin, I am one of the few who has a vested interest, a personal interest in making sure that we have those common sense reforms in place. I have 2 young adult sons that I love more than anything. And so it's personal for me when I see children being gunned down at schools, people being gunned down because of the color of their skin, in grocery stores, at churches like Mother Emanuel. So, it's incumbent upon us to protect each other. We say that, it's we the people, but it hasn't been about we the people for decades now, and we've got to change that. And that starts with common sense gun reforms, and we know some of the things that we can do. I released a statement after the school shooting in Texas, and I was reflecting, and I just put my reflections into writing, into words, because I was reflecting on the gun violence here, and I had just spoken with the parents of Ranjanae in Charleston, and it's just so heartbreaking that we won't even do here. The Republican majority is not even interested in doing what we can do here in South Carolina to curb and cut down on the gun violence that we're seeing. And we're seeing it in record numbers, and we're going to continue to see it unless and until we do something to stop guns, to stop those who don't need access to guns from gaining access to guns.
Now, from age 0 to 11, Senator, what number of children in South Carolina have actually been injured or killed by gun violence?
I don't have those numbers right in front of me, Quintin, but I'm sure it is an unprecedented number because that's what we're seeing in South Carolina. I don't have the actual statistics about, of the numbers of how many students, but if it's one, it's too many for me. And so I want to continue to do everything I can to stop that, decrease that number, to end that number if possible. But I can't do that in a vacuum. I can't do it by myself. But I have been, if you'll look at my record, I've been fighting for those common sense gun reforms that I know we need since I've been in the House, since before I was in the House, because I started my service in state government as right after I graduated law school. I worked with Republican Attorney General Charlie Condon at a time when our state was #1 in the nation for women who were murdered by men as a result of domestic violence. And, guns are always the weapon of choice in those cases. And so we know that, this didn't just start, but it has gotten drastically worse since the pandemic, and since the Republicans have lost their minds and started doing the things that they are doing to amp up this kind of rhetoric. I was one of the people who, after Newtown, I thought that we would do right, because who can watch children being gunned down in their classrooms? Who can watch that and not have to do something? I mean, that gave us all the mandate that we needed. And, of course, I don't live in that state, but it was just as important for me to be an advocate and a champion for those issues right here, because I saw it coming. I knew that, what we were seeing happen across the country was going to happen here. When it happened at Columbine, it was going to happen here. When it happened, at Sandy Hook, in Newtown, Connecticut, it was going to happen here. And it has. And we've still not done a thing about it. And that's troubling. And those are the reasons that we need a new governor. We need somebody who is willing, who has the courage to lead on those very important issues and to set the tone for our state and to help set our state's priorities.
And I got 5 minutes left according to Zoom.
Sure.
But what county in South Carolina has the lowest gun death rate?
To be honest, I don't look at statistics a whole lot, other than to know that we are at the top of the heap when it comes to the things that we should be at the bottom on. And we are always at the top when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to sexual assaults, when it comes to domestic violence. And we know that guns are the weapon of choice. And so I don't look at statistics as much as I look at people, and the people are concerned about their well-being. I'm concerned about their well-being, and so we've got to do something to change that.
And speaking of people, you said this, obviously, about the minimum wage. You said this quote: "I'm the only candidate in this race who believes the hardworking people of our state deserves a living wage of at least $15 an hour. South Carolina families shouldn't have to struggle to cover basic needs and barely scrape by. We can all thrive." But let me ask you this, Senator. What good is $15 an hour when it has the spending power of less than $9 an hour?
Well, $15 an hour, as I say every time I speak, is the starting point. But right now, Quintin, people are earning $7.25 an hour. So if I can get them up to $15 an hour, that is ground zero for me. And I personally believe that it should be more than that. And I'm fighting for more than that, but we've got to have a starting point, and that is, double what South Carolinians are able to earn right now. And not only am I the only candidate who has been vocal about that, I'm the only candidate who's introduced legislation to change it, when others have had the opportunity but did not.
As a matter of fact, your bill, Senate Bill 343, would set the wage actually at $9.25 an hour. How did you get from $9.25 to now saying, hey, $15 an hour?
Well, $9.25 was something that I did initially. Okay. And we can't withdraw the bills. So that bill is still out there, but I have been leading the charge, not only for $15 minimum wage, or living wage rather, but for unemployment benefits, as I said, to increase unemployment benefits as well, because nothing happens in a vacuum, Quintin. We have to have a starting point. And for me, $15 is that starting point. But when I introduced the other bill, I had not done all of the research that I've done since then, and I haven't seen that. I think I introduced a bill to tie it to inflation. I mean, we are at a point where we have to just start broadening those conversations, and I'm notorious for doing that. If you think about the fact that I'm the one who introduced the Viagra bill when I got tired of our male-dominated legislature coming for our reproductive rights and freedoms. I've introduced the Pro-Birth Accountability Act for those very same reasons, right when the fetal heartbeat bill was about to pass. So, I am notorious for broadening those conversations that I know we need to have. $9.25 an hour is not enough. We have to continue to fight for a $15 an hour living wage, and I'm committed to that.
Speaking of which, education, I know you fight for that and fight for the teachers a lot. Should the teacher pay raise increase by an average of 5% over the next 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. But I believe that teachers' wages should increase to the national average, and teachers' pay should absolutely increase. I mean, we have lied to teachers for years, and our Republican majority has lied to them, even when they came to the State House in record numbers and lobbied and rallied for higher pay. But not only higher pay, they rallied for smaller classrooms, smaller class sizes, less testing, and so many other things that were on their wish list. I mean, I think last year, Quintin, we were actually debating a bill that would give elementary school teachers a bathroom break. That is how far we are removed from reality. We have one senator in the South Carolina Senate who has a degree in education, and yet we don't listen to teachers on the front end. That needs to change. We have to do things differently to respect and to pay and protect our teachers in South Carolina. There's a reason that they are leaving our state in droves. They will continue unless we change the way we do things to make sure that we pay and protect them and respect them by listening to them on the front end as we are making these policies, so that they are the ones who are guiding the legislation that we introduce.
And quickly, I just looked at your Twitter page. Obviously, you want a debate between your opponent, Democrat Joe Cunningham.
The people want a debate between me and my opponent, and they deserve a debate between us because there are so many differences, and they need to be informed as they begin to vote. I mean, early voting starts today, Quintin.
Right.
So, yeah,
why now? Why now for a debate? Why not?
Well, we thought we had a debate until a few days ago. So it's not why now, it's why not. Why not now? Because SCETV pulled the debate just a few days ago. We were scheduled to debate tomorrow. Wow. And so that is why I went on Twitter and asked for Joe to at least debate me before people really start voting, so that they can make an informed decision about who they're going to support.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm going to talk to him about that as well, and those other issues, sure, and about Murdoch as well. But State Senator McLeod, thank you for your time.